Welcome to Coffee Talk with BGA. Today, I got the incredible opportunity to interview two friends from GRAIL. If you don't know who GRAIL is, they are a company that does blood tests to detect over 50 different types of cancer. We learned about them through their partnership originally with John Hancock. Before that, working with the reinsurance company Munich Re. And it's an incredible conversation about how cancer has touched all our lives, and this is a way to prevent it and extend out the lives of our loved ones. So we cover in this the science behind it. How does it work? How are they able to detect cancer in your blood? What's the science behind it? How they built the data set, their partnership with the NIH in the UK to launch a massive study, and why this is now being adopted by life insurance instead of our health insurance, and how that might hopefully change in the future. We talked about their partnership with John Hancock and how that got started. And then into their partnerships with a lot of new carriers like Symetra and Mass Mutual. SBLI has just announced, and several other carriers as well. We talk about success stories and what goes into getting a test and how that test affects your insurability. It does not affect underwriting. Now, if you have follow-ups and go to a doctor, of course, that will show up on a script check. But I want to get out in front of it and say it will not affect the underwriting of your client. And finally, we just touch on some final stories and an overview of what the process looks like from the client side to try and get over some of this apprehension, because this is a way to save lives. We touch on at least 5 different stories about this saving lives, and those are ones we're able to share and have signed off on. The amount of people that this has affected is even greater. So it's a longer episode, but watch it all the way through. It's really incredible, and I couldn't thank Daniel and Horacio enough for joining me on this. Hope you enjoy. Well, thank you guys for joining me. Now, for everyone, GRAIL is a technology we at BGA were introduced to actually through our connection with John Hancock. They were the first major carrier that we were aware of offering this service to be able to get a blood test and detect over 50 different types of cancer. And because of our connection with them, we got a lot of agents and friends in first to do testing, and a lot of the people in our office here and who are close to us have John Hancock policies. They were able to get these tests done at no cost to them. And out of a group of 30 or so who did it, 2 were actually detected with cancer. One is in a waiting period for it to look and see if it accelerates. The other was treated and now is fully in remission. I know I can't say completely cured, but we're looking at a high likelihood that it's never going to come back. So we're extremely grateful to GRAIL here. We love the partnership, and it's expanding to other insurance carriers. So we got the opportunity to interview Horatio and Daniel here. And so I want to welcome them in and share with you this amazing technology that has spread from John Hancock over to Symetra and several other carriers along the way that we'll touch on today. Thanks for joining us.
Trent, thank you so much for having us, and thank you for that introduction. There's no better way of being brought into a conversation than to hear some of the stories where we can have impact to help save lives, and the people on your team, wishing them the best in their remission, recovery, and we're here to support them along the way.
Thank you.
Thanks for the time. We're grateful to be here.
Of course. So each of you, GRAIL's a young company. So what were you doing before, and how'd you find your way into GRAIL?
Yeah, Daniel, if it's okay, I'll kick
Sure.
things off a little bit. Before this, which is a little bit of how I met GRAIL, I led corporate development at a decentralized clinical trial company called Science 37. So basic corporate dev, investor relations, etc. And I met GRAIL because we pitched to them to run their clinical study in their early stages. So GRAIL did a study at the very beginning called CCGA. and Science 37 try to pitch them to do the work. But I remember hearing their story and hearing we can detect cancer through the blood. On a personal side, if you'll let me share, my sister was diagnosed with cancer when she was young. So, Daniel and I are friends, so he knows this. He knows how much I love my family, and family's the most important thing. And I was lucky enough to be living in Spain when my mom called me one day and said, "You need to come back home. Tanya's sick." And I remember the feeling in the waiting room while she was going through her procedure and feeling helpless. I'm someone that's slightly neurotic, to be frank, and wants to feel some sense of control. And I had never felt more of hopelessness and not being able to do anything. So that feeling stayed with me for a while. So when I heard about GRAIL, when I heard about cancer, I just kept my eye out. And there was a moment where GRAIL was going to go commercial and they put some jobs out there. And I said, I don't care if I clean toilets at this company. I think this could be the thing to change the world when it comes to cancer. My sister was lucky that we had a mom that was a surgeon that checked her more than probably anyone does when they have a doctor at home. I don't know how often people have that luck. And that's why she's still here, right? So that's what I'm hoping to bring to people. And that's why I joined GRAIL and what I was doing a little bit before. Daniel?
Yeah, so hard act to follow on that one, but my background is largely consumer marketing. So I was at United Healthcare before GRAIL. Before that, I was at Best Buy and General Mills. So sort of a innovation focused marketing background. And out of the blue, I woke up with a note in my LinkedIn inbox from a recruiter about GRAIL. And 2.5 years later, I'm still pinching myself that we get to do this. So that's sort of been the journey here, and couldn't ask for a more important place for me to focus my time and energy in terms of being passionate about marketing, consumers interfacing with new technologies. And so, yeah, 2.5 years in.
Well, General Mills as well. I have to ask how you feel about the Unfrosted movie that Seinfeld came out with.
Haven't watched it yet, but
Okay.
need to. But yeah, that'll probably bring back some PSTD from the CPG world.
Yeah, it's really good, actually.
It
Did
is.
you watch it? Okay.
Yeah.
It's a lot of nostalgia,
Yeah.
and a lot of rapid fire jokes, but it's good. Now, let's just start from the baseline. I know you were talking about GRAIL going commercial. What was the start of GRAIL?
Yeah, as it tends to happen in science, GRAIL was a little bit of an accident. And a lot of people might not know this, but Illumina, which is a San Diego-based company, it's the largest sequencing company in the world, was running a clinical study for pregnant women. Technology was developing in that time in early mid 2010s. It was a NIPT test, so non-invasive prenatal testing. So Illumina was trying to assess, because they had bought a company called Vernata, hey, can we learn that there's something going on with the fetus, right? With the baby while the mom is pregnant? Because traditionally, in order to do these exams, you would have to inject the mother with a huge needle through her stomach into the placenta, extract the fluid, and analyze it, right? It's very dangerous, very painful, very complicated. So they learned through studies that the baby shed DNA into the mother's bloodstream. And so they were running the study of 125,000 pregnant women to assess, okay, can we figure out if there's something going on with the fetus? Out of 125,000 women, 10 of them had an abnormal signal, something we didn't understand. Thankfully, we had amazing boards and doctors, and one of those doctors came back and said, that looks like cancer. And so we followed up with these women, these 10 women, and we learned that the baby was completely fine, but all these women had cancer, and a different type of cancer, and a different stage of cancer. At the same time, they shared these results with the Illumina board, and one of our board members, Jeff Huber, his wife was fighting cancer, late stage colon cancer. And he and the other executives at Illumina said, it doesn't matter if we do something with this. This is a moral responsibility that we need to take this to the world. Like, we just found a new way of detecting cancer, and this could change the whole paradigm. It's a very sad but moving story. A few months, probably a month before GRAIL actually came to market, which we're probably one of the first and most best funded companies to exist, because our Series A was $100 million and 50 scientists and executive people, because obviously it became this like coming together, Illumina funded. They also understood it was going to be very capital intensive. So they spun us off rather than keeping us in, because it was going to require a lot of clinical studies and validation. A month before the company became who it is, Jeff Hoover's wife passed away. And you can imagine that the board said to him, hey, he stepped down from the Illumina board and said, I'll be the CEO of this company. They're like, hey, take as long as you need. This, this can wait. We'll keep moving. We'll have an interim CEO. And he said, no. He said, I need to do this. And he came in. And if I can add a little bit more, if you don't mind me, Trent, he was doing work with his internal team about like the name of the company, the color of the company. And you might know our colors are purple for GRAIL. He said, look, do all the market research, A/B testing, analyze whatever you want. The color of the company is going to be purple, because that was my wife's favorite color. And that's why our color is purple. So that's how GRAIL came to be.
That's awesome. So you're testing the blood and able to detect signs of cancer in there. What are you looking for when you're looking at these blood tests?
Yeah, great question. And Daniel, please keep me honest with this. Yep. The test is what is detecting is called cell-free DNA. So all of our cells, they die and they go into our bloodstream. Those cells, as they break down into cell-free DNA, right? We have the same DNA in our body, but it's different categories. That's what we're looking for. In your blood, we're not looking for your red blood cells, white blood cells. We're looking for the cell-free DNA. So just like any cell, when tumors are there, when they're present, they also die and they shed into the bloodstream. We're looking for those tumor cells. The way that I tried to explain it, and I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, so huge caveat here, but the way I tried to understand it here is you have the same DNA in your eye as you do in your lung, as you do in your liver, but they're very different cells. So what is it? It's methylation. It's these proteins, they go on top of the DNA that say turn on and turn off, like light switches. And when they turn on, let's say in your liver, they're like, turn on the ability to process sugars and glucose, right? In your lung have the ability to, exchange oxygen. Cancer has a common signal. Things that it does is it wants to hide from the immune system. So it's turn on immunosuppressors. And then it also wants to grow really fast. So turn on cardiovascularization, pumping a lot of blood. So we find a common signal, right? That's what we can detect, a common cancer signal. And then the unique part of our test is that because we're looking at the DNA and the surrounding methylation, like these on and off switches, the remaining part stays almost always the same. So we can tell you where it's coming from in your body. So we see the common cancer signal, and then we go, well, what does the rest look like? Oh, it looks like lung, right? So what we do is we literally use AI, and it's two parts to our test. Do we find cancer? And then the AI says where it is in your body. And so that's how we categorize it. So that's what we're looking for.
Got it. And you mentioned two things in there that require a lot of data. Get studies done and getting artificial intelligence built. How did you build this massive data set that you have now?
Yeah, that's an incredible question. First, as I mentioned, Jeff Hoover was our CEO. He helped create Google Maps. So our origin story is the largest sequencing company in the world, and ex-Google executives coming together to come up with a mission, right? So two huge industries coming together to fight one of the biggest problems. Not afraid of data, either one of them. We have the largest database and clinical study in cancer genomics that we understand in the world today. We have over 385,000 patients in clinical studies. And we've also analyzed SEER data and partnerships with the American Cancer Society and everything in order to collect as much of that information. So that's what allowed us to train our classifier, right? To your point. Not only did we build this AI, but we've been training it all the time. How it happened was we started with one study, right? After we did the NIPT and, an accident happened and we found out. What we did is we did a study where we knew the individuals had cancer, right? We knew this person had stage 2 pancreatic. They had stage 3 colon, stage 1 head and neck. And then we ran the test on top of that and said, okay, which ones did we catch? Which ones did we miss? And when we went through that, we were able to find that we could detect over 50 different types of cancers with a less than 1% false positive rate and an accuracy, as I mentioned, of where it comes to your body of close to 90%. But we didn't just do this once, right? We've done this multiple times in multiple different studies to validate and kind of become more precise. One of the things that I love about our technology is that because it is leveraging AI, it gets better as more technology comes through. So we have literally found cancers that we did not train the classifier to find, right? In that first study, there was maybe a very rare cancer. We didn't assess that it was there. And then later on in commercial, we've been able to find them live in the real world, which has been the most, I mean, when you come across that type of like impact, you're like, wow, like we didn't even think this was possible and it's still happened.
And I understand even on a micro level, if I take the test 5 years in a row, it's going to get even better at my my own genetic sequence and finding if there's any abnormalities there as well, right?
That's correct. So you have like a threshold, right? A baseline of if there's enough cell-free DNA in your blood, right? A common thought that people have is like, hey, we always have cancer cells and our immune system, kills them off, they disappear. Absolutely true. There's mutations and not all mutations are cancerous, et cetera. But we get more precise with you, right? So as we're seeing year over year, it's like, is there a differentiation between year 1 and year 3 that we should assess? So yes, the idea is for people to be taking it on an annual basis to understand that.
Now, on the data side, walk me through this UK test you guys get a lot of play out of, and we like to brag about as well on your guys' behalf.
Yeah, well, if anyone knows that the NHS is, and we love the NHS, but it's commonly understood to be one of the most, if not the most conservative payer system in the world, right? Highly regarded, very respected, high prestige. And it was assessing a goal of bending mortality in the UK. And of all the technologies it could have chosen, it partnered with GRAIL to bring Galleri to the UK population to do a study of 140,000 patients. It's a blinded study. 70,000 of the individuals will get a result in order to assess treatment, and 70,000 of them will be blinded, meaning they're going to get their blood taken, but they're not going to get a result back. So we're going to assess over 3 years if we actually have that state shifting impact, right? Can we compete better than traditional care? Can we detect these cancers earlier? Had we detected them earlier? So it's an incredible partnership to really bring new technology. And as the trial goes and it is successful, which there's recently press release of, hey, things are progressing really well. I don't get access to that data. I'm not that cool. They will roll it out to 1 million of their patients, and then from there to the whole UK population. So that type of partnership had never been heard of in the world. So to see that collaboration speaks volumes of not only our technology, but just the collaboration and the emphasis of fighting cancer.
And one thing, if I may add very quickly on that, we enrolled 140,000 patients in that study and for the NHS, which is a huge number. We did it in 10 months, which is a really short amount of time for that many patients. And one of the reasons we were able to accomplish that is that we had basically these mobile phlebotomy units that could go out and to people's communities, to their localities, and get their blood drawn there, versus having to ask people to come to different medical centers. And so the fact that Galleri could go to them, I thought was one of the reasons, that we were able to enroll that many people that quickly, which is just a cool feature of Galleri, that you can go anywhere to get people's blood drawn, and the magic of the test, if you will, is done in the lab versus folks having to find a medical center.
Right. I mean, as we were talking about before this offline, getting a PET scan or MRI, and this is easy. There's a Quest on every corner.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So we were talking about this, but I think you brushed over a piece that I found pretty impressive is how quickly those tests sold out and the people signing up for this.
Yeah, so it says Daniel was mentioning a little bit. We enrolled in 10 months, right? The whole study. Uh, for context, right? Global context. The last time a study enrolled faster than this was in the 1950s with the polio vaccine. And it's a bit of a joke, but they had Elvis promoting this. We didn't, and it was in a pandemic, right? So it
Yeah.
was in the middle of people being at home, but it just resonated with everybody, right? Globally, we have close to 9.8 million deaths of cancer, 20 million new cases. In the US alone, we have 600,000 people that die of cancer every year, right? This has been a war we've been fighting for over 50 years, and we've been losing this battle. Just again, to contextualize it, at the peak of the pandemic, about 490,000 individuals were dying. We have a pandemic sized problem every year in cancer, and we've been throwing everything at it, and it hasn't really been working. So that's the motivation, right? I mean, I knew, to Daniel's point, like if people were going around the country in buses saying, come take this test, it can help detect cancer early, I would be the first one on top of that, right?
Right.
But I live in Southern California, so not London. It was a little bit hard.
Yeah. Well, uh, we talked about the 50 different cancers that you can, over 50 now, that you can detect. And we were talking about this offline. What defines a cancer that you can detect and can't detect? What ones show up more than others?
Yeah, Daniel, feel free you want to jump in here, but uh, here's the big differentiation in the cancers we can detect and we can't detect. We detect the most aggressive types of cancers. We've learned in our clinical studies as well as being commercial that the more aggressive the cancer, the more it sheds cell-free DNA into the bloodstream, right? So we're talking about these liver cancers, these pancreatic cancers, these lung cancers that are very, very aggressive. The ones that we miss are in two categories. One is those that don't have access to the bloodstream, such as brain cancer. It has a blood-brain barrier and therefore doesn't shed into the circulatory system as much. And then the others are those cancers that are traditionally called indolent, where you die with but not die from. That's the key differentiation, right? Most of those watch and wait type of cancers. So early prostate, thyroid, etc. But the really aggressive ones, the ones that if you don't treat, they move very rapidly through your body, getting to metastatic and sadly very poor outcomes. Those are the ones that we can detect very early and have the biggest impact on them.
So to recap, we have a pandemic-sized problem. You
Yeah.
guys have a solution that can detect the 50 most aggressive cancers. You've done tests with the UK, one of the most conservative payer systems out there. And you're getting good results back on that and from your other studies that you've done. So shouldn't this be covered by my health insurance? And why isn't it being covered by my life insurance?
Those are two very different questions. One is why is it being covered by your life insurance? And the other is why isn't on the health insurance side?
Right.
Daniel, I'll take the health insurance if you want to take the life.
Yep.
Sadly, we didn't have as a country, right, as a health system, as a kind of government institution, the foresight of thinking that health insurance should be preventative when it was first being established, right? And I'm talking here about a Medicare. When it was first structured in the early 1960s, everything was, hey, you're sick, let me cure you, right? Which made perfect sense. That's how we came to realize medicine. Obviously, we've grown a little bit and evolved, and now it's been let's prevent you getting sick. Let's prevent you getting diabetes. Let's prevent you getting heart conditions. In order for that to happen, you have to alter laws. Literally, you have to have an act of Congress to change the law in Medicare Act to say we will include preventative measures such as mammography, colonoscopy, low-dose CT. So our 5 screenings that we have today that are covered by your health insurance, is because you've had a path, Congress, right? A law through Congress in order to do so. You can imagine that's a big lift in order to do so. That's number one, right? That's just like the overall theme. We just have to change this mentality of being like sick and cured to let's prevent you getting sick. And that's happening, but it takes a while. If you've seen anything about our politics recently, passing laws are super easy. Have no problem. This is not an election year, so obviously it's going to happen at any time soon. So that's number one, right? But what I can say that I think is fantastic, and this is not a GRAIL bill, this is a multi-cancer early detection bill that GRAIL also supports, has over 300 co-sponsors, right? That's an amazing collaboration, bipartisan, that is not commonly seen. The second is in order for this to be covered by health insurance, it has to be FDA approval, right? It has to go through this rigor. So as I mentioned, we have over 385,000 patients in clinical studies. We are doing the NHS study. We just announced a study with Medicare for 50,000 patients called REACH. We believe our science. We share it. We publish it. It just takes years, right, to prove some of these things out. And so we're submitting constantly with the FDA. We were device designation breakthrough in 2019, right? So those things take a while. So we look at the timeline, right? We go through trials, top end, right? And then from there, we go through Congress and we pass a law. And then from there, you added to physicians to adopt new technologies, which is, this is a scary stat, but if you have if you're a doctor in a normal system, not concierge, you have hundreds of patients, hundreds. So 7 to 12 minutes per patient. You're not there thinking about cancer every second. You're thinking about metabolic, cardiovascular, colds, right? For them to adopt new technologies, it takes many, many years. So if you stretch out that timeline of going through trials, passing a law, then educating PCPs, that's just decades. So for us, we said, let's go to market first. We know we can take this through LDT, through CLIA and CAP certification. Let's work in parallel on our clinical trials, and let's work with Congress to bring this to market, to shrink that, right? As I mentioned, 600,000 people will die of cancer every year. Imagine that timeline being spread out. So we can bring that together even a few years, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Daniel, I don't know if you want to jump in on like why we do this in life.
Yeah, the life insurance story is pretty fascinating. So a lot of credit here really goes to Mark Jaguar and the team at Munich Re, who's our exclusive reinsurance partner. And they were looking for a solution, as Horacio mentioned, with the pandemic, as a way to mitigate early cancer deaths. And the way they look at it is they're not bound by some of the same restrictions as other health innovators. So they could go to market now versus having to wait for FDA and Congress to act. And so, they looked at our technology and thought it could be a solution for what they were seeing from a early death perspective. And so we partnered with them 2 years ago in May. And so through Mark Jaguar at Munich Re, through John Hancock and Brooks Tingle, they were the first to really bring this to their policyholders. And so we now have multiple partnerships. But I think the industry looked at this as, we can act now. We can be a bridge between people that perhaps have cancer right now versus waiting for, FDA and Congress to come to fruition. And so enter life insurance companies who care about their policyholders and have ways to innovate and bring this to market. And so they've really created access for folks that otherwise wouldn't and would have to wait. So huge credit to the industry and some key leaders at these different partners we have.
Well, we interviewed Brooks, and he has a story about seeing you guys on 60 Minutes,
Yeah.
and then
Yes.
hunting you guys down to get you as part of the benefits with Vitality. Do you have a different take to this story, or is that pretty accurate?
No, that was spot on. So the team was knocking on life insurance companies for a little while to understand if there was a value prop, right? And so, as Daniel mentioned, we started with Munich, and we were starting to reach out to different carriers. And if anyone knows Brooks Tingle, he is an innovator. He's someone that when he knows something, he will run through any wall, anything to get it. And I think it was. And I'm sure this is his story, but like I think he saw it one evening. By the next morning, I was getting an email saying, we want to talk to you. And I was like, oh, wow, like this is incredible. I think we had our president, Josh, met with Brooks a week later, and they were in our office a month later, and we were announcing partnerships 3-4 months later maximum, right? They ran as fast as humanly possible to this. And we owe everything to them to be in this market, right? They gifted us their brand, their credibility, and they said this is something we need to do. And to their credit, to Lindsay Hansen, to Stephanie, to Brooks, they've said, hey, let's bring this to market, and we don't care about exclusivity. We don't care about anyone else doing this. This is something to do good. And to be honest, it has to do with these personal stories that you started off with, Trent, and that I brought up. Like, I hate to say this, but we're all touched by it, right? So in any way, anyone you've talked to, anyone we've ever worked with, there's sadly a story behind that to say, I just lost someone, right? And I want to see if I can do something about it.
Yeah. I mean, we're close with Brooks here. So we talked to him a lot, and we heard that story that they got the opportunity for exclusivity. And there was, I don't know if there was much of a reaction to that. Like, okay, that makes sense. They would get exclusive rights, that they were the first to come out with it. And then we heard, but he said no, and he wanted to be available to all carriers who wanted to do it and be able to open up outside of that. And there was this general sense of just relief, like that, just the right thing to do.
Yep.
And I'm glad you made that choice. So I'm
Yep.
glad you touched upon that, because it was a powerful moment that, you're in your work brain of logic and, okay, yeah, of course, they're going to get exclusivity. And then you hear the exact opposite, and you're like, oh gosh, I'm so glad you were in that mindset of doing what's right for the world, not what's right for, profit this quarter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Daniel, go ahead.
I was going to say, I couldn't agree more. And it was such a cultural shift too. I mean, Brooks has been such an advocate for us. He's, offered to speak to different employers or other partners. He's come to the Galleri Classic both years in a row and has talked. And so, yeah, he's just been a force of not just what this means to John Hancock and Vitality, but, in his words is like, why wouldn't you be trying to help your customers live longer, healthier lives, regardless if you're with, X carrier or John Hancock? He really believes in this. And I loved he was with us in an event. He just, how much better does it get in life than to be working on something that has such an impact, both personally and professionally. So yeah, forever grateful for the Hancock team.
Well, yeah, if I can just pile on a little bit, is he he has been the kindest in talking to his competitors to say, what are you waiting for? Right. I mean, to your point, I remember being in that room, and it was a conversation of like, exclusivity is like, it's going to be a topic, right? And it was a second, this is not a thing we're going to do. And then, to be frank, he was asked multiple times from his own leaders. He wasn't CEO and president back then. And he's like, no, this is not the right thing, right? So, as Daniel mentioned, really appreciative that he did that. And he has stayed very true to that sentiment of like, we have as an insurance, as an industry, to bring this to market and to be proud that we're doing it. So we're very thankful he was the first one to do it.
The only correction, Trent, to the Brooks story is that it wasn't 60 Minutes. It was NBC Nightly News.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No.
Well, let's stop patting Brooks on the back. I know he got a big award this year and he doesn't need any more. Let's talk about his competitors. First of all, who has surprised you about being a really good golfer at the Galleri Classic?
Oh, wow. Bill Sheila is really great from Libra, and his whole team is very good, which tells me they golf a lot. I think there's a few that are great at entertaining and not as much at playing. But I feel if I share some of those names, I think Phil Bouvier from Symetra wouldn't be too upset with me sharing the fact that I think he can make people laugh, but I don't know how great his swing is these days. But he's traveling too much.
Yeah.
I think who's probably the best at playing that
I
I've
thought you were
seen.
telling me Kevin Brayton was pretty good.
Oh, yes, he was. That's right. Peru. Yeah, Kevin was really good. He carried his team that day. He definitely did.
Good.
Everybody was very appreciative. Yes, Kevin was very good. Very good. We were lucky enough at the Galleri Classic to bring 12 of our partners, including Kevin, including Bill, including others. So uh, I think there's a few that would say they didn't play that great, but they liked the experience.
Yeah. And now, who can you talk about as having partnerships with outside of John Hancock? We mentioned Symetra earlier, and
Yep.
they just had a big press release about that.
Mass Mutual recently announced their expansion with us at ITI at the Javits Center. So Sears Merritt, Michael Galleri, Adam Fox, in support with Roger, announced their expansion of our program, which had close to 24 cancer signals detected in their press release of the pilot. So they're taking this almost threefold to close to 200,000 policyholders, which is really a fantastic show of innovation. Symetra, as you talked about, just announced this cancer care product, right? First time we're in a product and being sold into one. So seeing that great momentum. Principal has been an incredible partner for us. They were one of the I would say surprises to our industry to say, what do you mean Principal is doing this, right? And I think Danny, you might remember this, where they told us straight up in the meeting, like, we don't engage with our policyholders. We send them a bill. That's what we do, right? So they were afraid, rightfully so, to say, like, how will they respond if we send them something? And their engagement has been incredible. But Daniel, I'm sure there's a series of other carriers. Do some of them come to mind for you?
I mean, M Financial was right, not necessarily a carry, but one of our first partners. And we have some great stories to tell from there. Nationwide has policies with them. I'm trying to think of any others. Guardian.
SBLI just announced their BOLI offering, right? EMC is doing a program with us launching later this year. I think we have a few others that are coming to bring press releases in the next quarter. But we have altogether 11 partners offering this to their policyholders.
And with each of those carriers, does the way you work with them look the same? Has it been standardized or is it different for each one?
It's somewhat different depending on how they want to bring it to market. So for the John Hancocks, for the Mass Mutuals, they have really strong marketing teams that deliver, direct to policyholder communications. Some of our other partners opt to go more through their distribution communities. And so we have a team that works on what we call distribution activation, which is meeting with those firms, doing webinars, trainings, providing collateral for them to reach out to their policyholders about the fact that they have Galleri as a benefit. They can also ask GRAIL to do marketing on their behalf, which we've stood up as well. So those are the two primary paths. And actually what we've found is that they're not mutually exclusive. They're actually quite complementary. You could, reach out as a carrier a number of times and say, hey, we've done our marketing. Now it's up to the producer who knows the client to talk to them about it. So both have been very effective. Obviously, the producer side is very personable, and so we want to support that. But yeah, both have been a huge learning and quite effective in terms of driving, engagement uptake that Horacio was speaking about. In the case of Principal, which was somewhat of a surprise, but a marketing use case, if you will.
Yeah.
Trent, I would say, like, think about you, right? You were
Right.
so innovative, right? You started this podcast, you did doing something new. It looks, this episode might be, standardized, but it's different, right?
Right.
And that's kind of like I would describe, like, the little bit of the flavor. We've learned to launch a pilot. From there, they expand. It's just a question of, like, do they want to get into health and wellness, right? Do they want to help fight cancer? And then from there, is it BOLI? Is it a new product? Is it in force, right? That's where they kind of differentiate a little bit.
Yeah. And so for all these policyholders who are getting this, do all of them have the same requirements to get a test? Is it all 50 and over for each of them, or are they pushing that number up a little bit in some of those?
Great question. All the 50 plus is a guidance based on our clinical studies. So it's just like colonoscopy is based on the guidance that are set. We've learned, right, the risk of cancer over the age of 50 is 13 times higher than under the age of 50. So it's a huge number, right? So to that point, that's where we started. Go ahead. You had a question?
No.
So that's the approach, right? That's where we start in those populations. There's other categories for pilots that they do. Sometimes they do certain types of products, right? They might go permanent, they might go term, they might go over a certain policy size, they assess it. But really the guidance of over the age of 50 is based on our clinical studies and validation there.
And you have some exceptions to that, right? If you're adopted or if you have family history.
Yeah, great question. So there's over the age of 40 with high risk. That's what we call it. So an example of that is having been HIV positive, right? That increases your risk of cancer. BMI over 30, family history to your point, right? If you had a direct line of someone that had been either a cancer survivor or had lost their battle to cancer. So those are the categories. We do have a partner that is, going to make an announcement around those. You might be able to guess the most innovative players that are always pushing the envelope, but soon to be announced.
Okay. And does this affect underwriting? I know that's going to be a question of a lot of agents out there.
Yeah, great question. The answer is even within our partnerships and every contract we do, the whole focus is for this not to affect underwriting, right? Never the intent in every single conversation is this focus into underwriting. That's why most of the programs you've seen are always in in-force. Someone already has a policy. There's no reason, no focus, no wanting to affect that coverage. In the products, it's part of the product, right? So that's the approach. Yes, if someone does end up finding their cancer and they want to get more coverage, it's the cancer that is actually potentially deferring, delaying, or denying them that coverage. But in no way or form, and every partner in our contracts with them has always focused on, this is not our intent. We don't want to deny that coverage. We actually want to protect them, right? So in short, the answer is no.
And correct me if I'm wrong about this, but it's not that your test would show up and say, I have cancer. It's that I am now going to the doctor and trying to work with them. That's showing up on the script check.
Yeah, great. And thank you for bringing it up. That's correct, right? So our test report will say cancer was found. The signal of origin is pancreatic, right? And so we support through that process. The next step is bringing them to their PCP, their primary care physician. And then from there, supporting that diagnostic resolution, right? So what are the follow-up tests that are taken to have a confirmatory diagnosis? And then from there, treatment. So this isn't hey, there's a positive signal and you go into surgery room, right? You have a series of steps. Our goal is to shrink that timeline and support this.
Great. So I want to touch back on Munich Re before we dive into what going through this test looks like, so we can grab a little soundbite to send to all of our policyholders. But you talked about Munich Re being your exclusive reinsurance partner. We've done some interviews with people who have worked in the reinsurance space, and they have a massive amount of data at their fingertips to look at what the effects of these decisions are. Are you starting to see anything through your relationship with them of how this is improving lives, improving profitability of these companies, and the ROI on that?
Danny, do you want to jump in or want me to kick it off?
Go ahead and kick this one off.
Yeah. I was just in a meeting with Alex Yang, who is our main point of contact and supports Smart GGAIR. And he was doing this high-level analysis that the industry has invested approximately, a few $1 million, handful $1 million. And we have impacted close to $80 million of policy coverage, right? And this is just starting off with the first few pilot programs. So it's an order of magnitude of impact from the investment. Does that mean that it changes pricing structures, reserve holdings, or anything like that? Not yet, right? We need hundreds of thousands of people to go through this process in order to be able to validate that. but just the inclination. I'll use two examples that I can share. We had a patient, a policyholder that went through this process with one of our programs, and you'll hear about a few more coming and becoming live in actually literally a week. But one of them, and it's very personal because it was my sister's cancer, and so that's why I remember it. Stage 1B, right? So you had someone that had cancer, didn't know about it, got it through their offering, and in the process of getting it, by the 6 months of the pilot being done, they were in remission, similar to your story, Trent, right? If you extrapolate that to the policy, this would have been something that in a year, or maybe those 6 months, it would have grown, right? The survival of that cancer is in the high 90s. So that example to me emphasizes like you're seeing that, right? You can take those numbers and blow that out in data, but that individual is telling you this was the one, right? So from a reinsurer perspective, we're seeing the continued participation. And even though Munich is our exclusive partners, we also are extremely thankful to companies like Swiss Re and SCORE and RGA and others that also are participating because they're seeing the benefits, right? So yeah, I would say where we are today is they had a hypothesis, they are proving it out. Once it grows, then they can really assess, well, what does it mean from pricing, from holding reserves, from other components?
I think the only thing to add to that is that as it relates to both the carrier and Munich Re, we're not sharing personal data back to our partners, right? This is all an aggregate. So it was very intentional for us to make sure we're protecting patients' privacy, their data. So we're not sending back to John Hancock or Mass Mutual who's taken their test or what the results were, and even with Munich Re. And so that's one of the things we wanted to address early, because we suspected that policyholders would say, well, what's the catch, right? Why are you sending me a multi-cancer early detection test? And so we were very, forthright that, we're not providing data back. It's only going to be with GRAIL. And so that really kind of, I think, lowered the temperature of why policyholders would want to take this from their life insurance carrier. So just want to call that out in terms of how we're, taking care of the data and privacy of our patients.
Thank you.
Yeah. Daniel, thank you for bringing that up so I don't get yelled at by compliance and quality. The story I'm sharing is one that the patient signed consent to share a little bit of it. So thank you for making sure I don't get fired.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good touch to how I want to end this, because there's been, from our side, a lot of apprehension and aversion we've experienced with agents and policyholders. Agents who don't want to have this conversation with their clients, and policyholders who might be afraid of the answer. And there was a guy who we saw speak at, I believe it was a John Hancock event, who was talking about his diagnosis with breast cancer, and how quickly that metastasized, and how men typically don't get breast cancer. And he's a healthy, normal individual, and you're not checking yourself for lumps.
Right.
It was a 1 in a million case that he caught there, and it would have blown up. And now he's on a speaking circuit trying to get people to take your test. And he talked about some of the fear he had and how that was eased, and then he now afterwards how grateful he is to do it. And part of that was just understanding what the data was behind the test that you guys have talked about. What goes into the test, what does it look like to get a test done, which we can touch on. And then awareness, which I want to touch on, that marketing plan that you're talking about. So if you guys can just give me what, the 2-week process looks like, I believe, of getting a test done. What are the steps insured would go through?
Yeah, I can start, H, and then please jump in. I'll kind of start. Let's imagine a carrier's reaching out to you. The carrier's role as the marketing agent is really to extend an invitation. And so one of the things we found is that while the innovation of Galleri is a very breakthrough, cutting edge novelty, the marketing is actually pretty straightforward. If you have an email address, we recommend an email. If you have a home address, send them a letter. If they have a producer, talk to them about it. And really that invitation is just to get you to a landing page. So we have co-branded landing page with our partners. That's where policyholders can really, make an informed decision, watch a testimonial video, read about the test. and then proceed. And it is prescription only, so they will go through a telemedicine partner to get their test prescribed. One of the things as a marketer that I really love about our test is that you don't have to leave your home to get screened for 50 types of cancers. You can request it online. The kit is shipped to you. A phlebotomist can come to you, which we offer. Your tests will come to you. So you don't have to be next to a Mayo Clinic or Cleveland Clinic to get access to this type of technology. It comes to you. So that's just sort of the high level. We do ship a kit to you in a couple days after your prescription's approved. And then you can complete your blood draw a couple ways. You can go to a nearby clinic. We have a lab finder that will direct you to, or schedule, like I said, an at-home phlebotomist that come to your home or your business. And then once that blood draw is done and shipped to our lab, we return results in about 2 weeks. And it's a binary result. Either we'll let you know no cancer signal was detected, or cancer signal detected, cancer signal of origin, pancreas, lung, whatever we happen to find. And for those folks that do have a cancer signal detected, do know that we have quite a bit of support system for them. We have medical science liaisons that will talk to their doctor. If they don't have a doctor, we have patient advocates that will help them find a PCP. We have a board of specialists that will work with doctors for uncommon cancers or ones that they're not familiar with on how to treat, because we are finding cancers very early that you otherwise wouldn't, right? And so some of this is new to physicians. And so we take that very, very seriously. And that's sort of a wraparound service we provide as a cost for the test. So that's not additional dollars for the carrier or for the patient. At that point, we provide that on their behalf. But I'll pause there. Horacio, did I miss anything?
No, you're fantastic, Dan.
I want to highlight that patient advocate though, because we had one of the people who took the test that we know well, got the positive result back and went to his primary care doctor and said, bad science, don't worry about it. Went to another primary care doctor and not bad science, just too early, don't worry about it. And then his wife's cousin or some connection like that is the head surgeon at a Cedars-Sinai, and said, I know all about this company. I'm 100% in. I'll see you in my office tomorrow. And so having a patient care advocate bypasses just the luck of having your wife's cousin be somebody important. So that's a really, really important thing that you detailed out there. And one thing we haven't touched on, this is covered by a lot of life insurance, but if you don't have coverage with John Hancock, Symetra, etc., are you able to get a test?
Yes.
Okay.
Great question. It's available in all 50 states in the US through, as Daniel mentioned, a prescription from a physician. So either your primary care physician, and if they don't know about it, as you just mentioned, Trent, send us a message. We'll reach out to your physician and say, hey, your patient wants to talk about this. Let us help you. Or through our telemedicine partners, right? So you can go to our website, provide your information. A physician will review it. And if it qualifies, they will provide you that prescription.
Awesome. Well, great. This was a wonderful podcast. I'm so glad to have you guys on. I mean, I'll end with this, that cancer has affected several people in my family. I wish we could have staved it off with a test like this. Horacio, you shared that it touched your family. Daniel, I'd be surprised if it hasn't touched yours.
Yes.
Yeah, it's hard now to find somebody who hasn't been touched by it. And to have a technology like this that's readily available, that can extend somebody's life, we're living in an incredible time. And I'm grateful that I get to have you guys on here so we can spread the word.
Thank you for doing so, Trent. We owe it to you and to people like you that help us share that message. So thank you so much.
This hasn't been published yet. You don't owe me any thank yous yet.
Well, thank you.
Awesome. Well, enjoy your weekend, guys, and I'll hope to speak to you soon.
Sounds good.
Talk to you soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Okay.